Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'll spend a couple of minutes, introducing the webinar and ourselves while we get started. So I'm Mattia Vaccari, and I'm a professor in astronomy, as you can tell from my background within the Department of Physics and Astronomy. But I also lead the eResearch office within the DVC for Research and Innovation Office. So today we are going to be showing you one of our latest services, that we introduced. It's called REDCap, and it's a powerful system to carry out surveys, so data collection, both online and in the field. And it's a worldwide consortium, that has become very popular in academia. We'll go through a general introduction of the REDCap system, thanks to Sarah Schaefer, our research data management specialist at the eResearch office. We'll then do a quick demonstration of how the data that can be gathered with REDCap can be exploited, visualized, and analyzed, using a collection of tools, and that will be done by Frederick Isingizwe, which is our data intensive research specialist at the eResearch office. Following from there, we will then go through a couple of examples, of REDCap usage, by two of our colleagues at UWC, Fahima and Tamriel Frank, specifically. They will show us, how they've been using REDCap in their own research. I guess we are okay. We're still getting people to join us. Have we got to a somewhat no, we're still getting new people joining us, so we'll give them an extra minute and then see. Can people hear me fine? Because there are some people who are claiming some sound issues on the chat.
Yes, I did have sound issues, but that's fine now, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess that by and large, we should be good to go. Okay, let's admit, some of the latest arrivals, and then let's. Okay, great. Thanks for the feedback, everybody on the chat. Okay, so please adhere to the usual etiquette. So mute yourself if you're not speaking and the like. And so I guess we can get started, with the introduction to REDCap by Sarah Schaefer, our RDM specialist. Sarah, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Schaefer. I work in the eResearch office as an RDM specialist. I'm going to share my screen.
Take it away.
Okay. Hi. Okay. I'm going to give a brief presentation about REDCap. Here you can see a little outline of my presentation. The URL for all UWC users to find REDCap. At UWC, we have a community of REDCap users that is steadily growing, and the eResearch office hopes to foster a community of learning and engagement with the software, where we are the facilitators, not necessarily the experts. Okay, so what is REDCap? REDCap stands for Research Electronic Data Capture, and it is a secure web-based application that was developed by Vanderbilt University in the United States. It was originally designed to collect, store, secure, and organize data provided by patients who completed online questionnaires and data collection forms. Although it was originally intended for only clinical research, its functionality has extended, and now it's used for building and managing online surveys and databases of any nature. It is known as a neutral data collection platform. Sorry. Projects are workflow-based, and they focus on collecting data and exporting it to statistical programs and other data analysis software. REDCap is designed to provide a secure environment so that research teams can collect and store information, including highly sensitive information, but not necessarily always highly sensitive information. This is reflected in the fact that many medical libraries use REDCap for assessment and capturing of data for projects. I'll address this further when I discuss REDCap and the POPI Act, and our two presenters later will also show examples of this. REDCap is free to use for organizations who join the consortium. UWC joined last year, although the REDCap software is not open source. All UWC students and staff members are able to create a REDCap profile using their UWC credentials. Okay, who uses REDCap? REDCap is widely used and well established. It is used by over 5,000 institutions in 141 countries. Over 1.2 million projects have been created by 1.8 million users. Over 14,500 articles have been published using REDCap data. You can see a map of instances of REDCap distributed around the world. REDCap databases use instruments like surveys and forms as their research capture tools. Projects are self-sufficient and secure. REDCap can be used for advanced longitudinal studies and repeating instruments. Projects are workflow-based, and they focus on collecting data and exporting it. Projects can vary in scope and complexity. The REDCap Shared Library is a repository for data collection instruments and forms that can be downloaded and used by researchers at partner institutions like UWC. Users can simply import them directly into REDCap and cite them later on with publishing. Over the last 18 months, REDCap has found widespread use in the public health response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The REDCap team is finding many instances where various groups are using REDCap to support COVID-19 surveillance. As you can see on the left, a simple Google Scholar search reflects this. You can see two papers on the right as further examples. On the top right, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health mandated that all healthcare workers be screened for symptoms daily prior to entering any hospital or healthcare facility. This paper is about how they rapidly created a digital COVID-19 symptom screening tool using REDCap. As we all know, there have been unprecedented health and social measures around the world, including restrictions, closures, mandatory face mask use, and stay-at-home orders. Quantifying the effectiveness of these interventions in reducing disease transmission is key to policy making in response to pandemics. So the second paper on the bottom right looks at the health intervention tracking for COVID-19, which is a curated and standardized global database that catalogs the implementation and relaxation of COVID-19 related public health and social measures in order to estimate the effectiveness of the interventions. Closer to home, most of you hopefully saw and completed the RDM survey that recently went round at UWC. The eResearch office and the library created a short survey to gather information about research data management practices and needs at the university. The aim of the survey was to identify current RDM practices with a view towards establishing data management services and guidance for researcher communities at UWC. We wanted to establish what kinds of research data is collected, where the data is held, and how it is being managed. As we are all no doubt aware, the POPI Act came into effect last week on the 1st of July. The purpose of the POPI Act is to give effect to the constitutional right to privacy by safeguarding personal information and to regulate the way in which personal information must be processed. REDCap is server software, and software alone cannot be compliant with a standard. However, REDCap is capable of compliance with just about any data protection standard, including POPIA. It is the environment into which software is installed that can be called compliant. So Compliance involves how it is installed, how it's maintained and supported, such things as what server settings are used, how servers are tested and how they're maintained, how often data is backed up, and how passwords are controlled. REDCap was designed with information security in mind. For example, when used for US health-related data, the consortium site ensures that it is HIPAA compliant. This is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and it's a US law designed to provide privacy standards to protect patient medical records. In Europe, instances of REDCap are used in GDPR compliant research, and at UWC, REDCap is excellent software to use in order for your research to be POPIA compliant. A little more on security. A few users have asked for details about security, so I'll go through this here. REDCap is more secure than other database management systems like Microsoft Access, for example, and can be accessed from any device with an internet connection and web browser. Fields in REDCap can be marked as identifiable, and the user has the option of de-identifying their data during export. The UWC network, which includes the REDCap servers, are protected using a Palo Alto firewall, which is one of the best firewalls available. Palo Alto Networks is a leading security vendor in the market, and the firewall offers the best in terms of security, performance, management, and logging. Server room access is restricted to specific IT personnel and is controlled via keycard access. This is monitored and recorded 24/7. The REDCap servers are virtualized in the ICS virtualization infrastructure, which offers fault tolerance and high availability in the event of disaster. Standard server operating system maintenance is done on a monthly basis to ensure the latest server patches are applied. The REDCap long-term support version is the REDCap software stream, which is currently installed. This gives the ICS team more time to implement REDCap software patches and upgrades. And this version is recommended to institutions that are subject to regulatory compliance, such as the POPI Act. Full server backups occur daily. Backups are stored in the cloud, and cloud infrastructure resides in South Africa. ICS perform internal vulnerability assessments on the servers to detect security vulnerabilities and allow us to mitigate against risks and threats. REDCap user accounts and authentication is integrated with the UWC network, and thus are subject to the UWC network password policies. And as per the license with Vanderbilt University, only UWC staff are allowed to maintain the REDCap software and infrastructure. IT maintenance and hosting of the REDCap server may not be outsourced as stipulated in the license agreement. Okay, moving on from security and the POPI Act. REDCap also has a mobile app that can be downloaded, and REDCap users can collect their REDCap data in this app on a mobile device like an iPhone, iPad, or Android phone or tablet. The mobile app adds a new dimension to REDCap's versatility because it provides users with a tool for offline data collection, which can be really valuable in the field, particularly in environments with poor internet connectivity. The app can't be used on its own, but is a companion app that must be used alongside REDCap itself. So in order to use the app, you must first be a REDCap user at a REDCap partner institution before you can utilize the app. REDCap includes a library of really informative videos, from getting started creating a project to more in-depth actions like using branching logic and creating longitudinal studies. We advise that you first consult the available resources through REDCap when starting a new project and looking for training. Importantly, REDCap is not a data analysis or visualization tool. My colleague, Frederick, will give an example of what can be done with data once you have collected it using REDCap. A user can review reports for data collected in REDCap or export the data to perform detailed analysis, such as visualizations. Data are presented in tabular format. The display includes a timestamp and indicates which survey questions are answered. Data can be really easily exported for analysis using statistical programs and other analysis software like SAS or SPCS or R or Starter. Optional formats for export include CSV, Excel, SPSS, SAS, R, Starter, or XML. I'm going to go through a few questions that have been sent from the REDCap community at UWC. First, are all UWC students and staff members able to create a REDCap profile? Yes. As long as the user has a @UWC or @myuwc.ac.za account, you'll be able to create a REDCap profile just by logging in with your usual account name and password. Can we add external collaborators and non-UWC researchers to a project? Also, yes. External user accounts are allowed and need to be sponsored by a UWC employee or project PI. Just send through a request and we'll give those permissions immediately. How do we access the mobile app? You need to download the app using whichever app store is available on your device. The person who created the REDCap project will need to request an API in order to get mobile access for that project first. How is REDCap data stored? UWC stores all data captured in REDCap on its own servers. So all project data is stored and hosted at UWC, and no project data is ever transmitted at any time by REDCap from UWC to. Okay. That's all from me for now. Thank you. My colleague Frederick is going to take over from here. Feel free to contact us at eResearch support if there are any further questions, and find more information about REDCap and UWC's instance of it on our eResearch website. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sarah. There were a couple of questions that we will address at the very end. I think one topical question on the chat was, can the mobile app be used for data collection, including image collection on respective records? I think that might be a question for Fahima, I suppose.
Let's leave it for last so Fahima can address it. But I want to say yes for now, although Fahima is our resident expert on the app. So let's save it for later.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Sarah. And we can move on, to Freddie, who is going to give us, a little showcase, of the things you can do, with data derived from REDCap, through a collection of different tools. Freddie, please go ahead. Yes, we can see your screen. We still can't hear you. Let me see.
Hi there.
Oh, hi. Yeah, we can hear you now and see your screen. So please go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, before I maximize this. So I'm going to show you a really basic demonstration of what you can do with the data after exporting it from REDCap. And like Sarah mentioned, there are many software you can use, and you can export it in different type of formats. But I'm going to choose just about 2 tools that are quite convenient for many reasons. First, okay.
Freddie, should you maximize? Should you perhaps? Oh, okay, great. Sorry, I didn't know what you were going to show. Now we can see the spreadsheet.
Okay. So the data from the survey, RDM survey, looks like this. There's about 141 people who responded. Some of them did not complete the survey, but we'll focus on people who actually completed the survey. And we have about 57 or 59 columns, and each column is basically an aspect or a question that was asked in the survey.
Freddie, we're getting a request to speak up a little bit.
Okay, let me, if I can increase the volume. Okay, I'll try. So this spreadsheet, you can view it obviously in other spreadsheet software like Excel or OpenOffice Calc, but I'm using Google Sheets. And I think that maybe storing things on Google Drive and Google Sheet or cloud-based storages and an application is much more convenient, especially with Google Drive and the application provided by Google. It makes it very easy to collaborate with others, and obviously it increases the security of keeping your data safe and accessible from anywhere. So these are the few things we are going to be talking about. Yeah, Google Drive, Google Sheets, I mentioned that. We'll see a little bit what you can do with Google Sheet with the data like that, and visualize it a little bit, and then we go a bit deeper using see what you can do on the data using Python's data analysis library in a Jupyter and Jupyter notebooks. And Jupyter is a very versatile platform. You can use different type of programming languages, Python, R, and others, and create interactive notebooks that make it easy to collaborate with others and document things you're doing. And yeah, that I mentioned that already. But if you really want to visualize your data and answer some questions or do some analysis, then you need to be very clear about what you want to find out, what are the questions, and that will be a good guide for you to know what to focus on, because you might not need to use all the data set or let's see. Okay, these are the few questions that I will try to answer or try to visualize and see if we can come up with some representation of what we have in the data. So before I go to Jupyter, let me try to see what we have here. So this Google Sheet, let's try to see how people store data at UWC, and some of the columns give us that information. Sorry, what is that? Computer. Yeah, some people store data on computers, external hard drives, in the cloud, and other things. And like other spreadsheets, you can try to see, to produce a broad overview of how people store data. It can include a chart from this data, and you can also do a lot of calculations, like other statistical calculations that you can do with other spreadsheets. So you can change maybe to have a better overview of what you're looking at. And these are on the left are the people who actually did not responded. Do not use this storage media. And then on the right, people with the response one is actually the people who use this type of storages. So this representation is not really that good because the bulk on the left is not useful for us. We want to look at the bulk on the right, which means that we need to actually remove what we don't need. So you can do it in a spreadsheet, but if you have a spreadsheet with like hundreds of thousands of columns and maybe millions of rows, it's going to be very difficult to do that with in a spreadsheet. So an alternative is pandas. Let's see where it is. Yeah. Using Python data analysis library, which is called pandas, and you can use that one very well in a Jupyter notebook. It's very popular for data analysis, and it's very highly customizable, and it gives you so many options you can do. So what are the things that you can do with this? Typical things you can do with that. is you will forgive me that I'm going here and there because I couldn't do everything in one go. You can play with columns, rename them, and exchange them, try to find out what are the missing data and remove them, and you can shape and reshape your data set however you want, and you can select part of it to focus on and all that. Yeah, and then so going back to the
Ja, ik kan zo moan.
Please, could people switch off their mic? We can hear you.
Okay, so I will work on a few things. I'll show you how to load the data in Jupyter Notebook, how to check the data type you have in the columns and do some basic statistics, and then how to plot data in different ways, and then how do you check for missing data because you cannot use missing data, and how do you deal with that? So this is going to be very basic, but it's a start to give you a rough idea of what you can do with this. So pandas deal with the tabular data, call it data frames, and you can load, we are loading here a CSV file, and this is the command you can use, and that you can load it from online. This one is stored in the same folder on my computer. The notebook and the file, the CSV file are stored in the same folder. So if they are stored in a different place, then you will probably have to accommodate this name with the path, or if it's online, then you can pull it online directly. That's also not a problem. So we call it our data set, we call it a survey, and then first you can view the first rows, 10 rows of the data set. This is what it looks like, and it tells you some NaN, that's not a number, there's a missing data, and all this you have to clean the data first before you can use it. And you can do some basic statistics. You can see how many rows you have per columns, and you can calculate a few quantities and statistical metrics on all the numerical columns. So we have, you can view you can have an overview of the data types you have when you use dataframe.info, and it will give you how many entries you have, and the indices, and how many columns, and then each column, the names of the columns, and the how many numbers are missing or not missing, and then what type of data you have. So the type of data in Python will either be integer or float numbers if it's numerical, and if it's not numerical, it will be, they'll be treated as strings. And so different formats. Not go deeper into that, but alternatively, you can view the columns separately, or you can view yeah, that's a different way of maybe reproducing some of the information you saw above. And yeah, but since some people did not complete the survey, and we are not interested in that, we want to focus on the part of the data set that actually people completed the survey. So we use a Boolean selector to focus on the people who completed the survey. So we remove the people who did not complete the survey. And so the column called UWC RDM needs analysis survey timestamp is the one that has that characteristic, completed and completed, and then we remove that. We remain with only people who completed, and they're characterized by the time they completed the survey. And we view the first 5 rows of the new data frame. We can review the information. Now we have 57 columns instead of 141. These are the only people who completed the survey. It's the similar information as before. But then, okay, the index has changed here. See, the first person who completed it is index number 3, and that was his ID. Participant ID is number 4. It's not the same as before. So some columns were, rows were removed, so we can maybe reset the index to have a well-ordered index as well. There are many ways you can look at the data that is missing. If you use this expression is null, you can see how many missing data are in every column, and this REDCap Survey identifier is basically has only missing data. This one has 1, that's 141. These are open questions. Mostly some people did not comment, and some people commented. That's why it has a lot of missing data. You can deal with all the parts of the data frame as you go along, and this is you can also look at you can produce a Boolean index to see on a specific column which one is missing, which one is not missing. So if you say, we ask the question, is it null, false, it means that this one is not missing. If it's true, then it is a number is missing, and so on. There's different ways of looking at it. You can also do it on the entire data frame. Okay. Now, since we don't want to use that column, the survey identifier that is completely missing data, we can also remove it using data frame.drop of the column. And the other missing values, there are other ways you can maybe fill up with numbers if it makes sense, or drop them, depends on what you want to do, what makes sense. Okay, let's do some quick visualization of a few things. Let's look at how people, the type of data people deal with at UWC. Some people, data sets, gene sequences, textual files, and many other things. This is one way you can represent the data using histograms. And it tells us that the data set, for example, about 40 people store a data set, about maybe 8 people store gene sequences, work with gene sequences. These are the people who do not store this type of data, and these are the people who do actually store this type of data on the right side, who replied by yes and who replied by no. Yeah, and this is the people who are aware of the RDM policy, about 20, maybe 2, and then most people don't know about the RDM policy at UWC. Let's see, this one tells us about the understanding of people who responded about the suitability of the research data management for in postgraduate programs. People who replied with 100%, agree, strongly agree. Maybe this is 90 something. Okay, here we can see on the column of RDM PG, which means people who agree, how people agree with the suitability of research data management to be part of the postgraduate program. So 90%, it means 90%, 97% agreement with that suitability, 100% agreement, and then we have 4% agreement. There's very few people who said about 2, 3, 4 people who don't agree with that, or maybe they're not sure. People who are in the middle, about 50% agreement, and the people who are, most people are in high agreement that research data management should be part of the program at postgraduate program at UWC. That's different ways of viewing some data. Okay, we don't need all these things, especially time is running out. This is
Yeah,
You
thanks,
can also
Freddie.
create-
I think we should come to a close for to make sure that we complete the program within the hour.
Yeah. Anyway, you can create another smaller data frame from the larger data frame and look at it separately. This is about the storage of data, and you can also represent it in a different way. You can either use a different type of charts, and you can customize them differently depending to suit your needs. And they have many other libraries. And okay, to close, it's very versatile, very highly customizable. It gives you highly customizable libraries for data visualization and analysis. And this is only scratched the surface. There's only much we can do in 10 minutes or 15 since I went over time.
Yes,
Okay.
and I guess Freddie also recorded an extended version of this presentation, which we are going to provide along with the recording of the webinar, I mean, to the registrants. So thanks a lot for this, Freddie. It was very interesting. So I think this was also meant to showcase, I mean, the opportunities, I mean, that are in store. I mean, if people want to go beyond, I mean, more conventional data analysis packages like Stata, SPSS. I mean, I've seen it being mentioned. And I was actually writing a reply, I mean, to that message. So I guess we will take questions at the end. I think quickly, I mean, answering the questions that came up. The general idea is that, well, Jupyter is just one option. I mean, it's a very flexible platform, I mean, that can allow you, I mean, to build upon data and do all sorts of things. So it's inherently more flexible, I mean, than commercial solutions, and it allows you, I mean, to experiment both on your laptop and on some free online services at will. So I think it's a very powerful proposition for teaching and research. Of course, it does require some getting used to and some training, but we're also happy to help with training and with pointing, I mean, people in the right direction, I mean, to get started. We also run data carpentry courses, I mean, that allows people, I mean, to become familiar with Python and R. That is, I mean, some free alternatives to commercial software. But I guess in the interest of time, I mean, I think we should get going. So we'll now hear, I mean, from a couple of power users at UWC. So first we'll have Fahima, I mean, leading us, I mean, through some examples, I mean, from his research. Fahima is a biostatistician working at UWC, currently working as a lecturer in the UWC's Faculty of Dentistry, while pursuing her PhD on the risk factors associated with the incidence of caries in children under 6. And she has a special interest in the detection of caries in adults as well as children. And she's interested in statistical models and analyzing time-varying covariates. So Fahima, if you could please share your screen, we'll be happy to hear from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Matea. I'm just struggling a bit. Just give me...
We can see your screen now, if that's any help.
Yeah, I know what I'm looking for. Found it. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out and coming to see what REDCap is about. I was introduced to REDCap at Stellenbosch University, and I was very excited to be working with REDCap at UWC because there are so many more benefits than using Google to collect your survey data, and it's much cheaper than using SurveyMonkey. So I've been asked to demonstrate some examples that I've come across at the dental faculty. So what's nice, like we have different types of research being performed at the dental faculty, and it could be field work, which is quantitative or qualitative. It could be desktop research like systematic reviews. It could be laboratory studies where we're counting the number of culture forming units after we've introduced interventions. So what kind of data can upload? Like I said, quantitative, qualitative, anything to do with systematic reviews or anything with laboratory studies. What's nice about it is that your supervisor will have access to your data as it's being collected or while you're running interim data. You'll avoid spelling errors, and this will save your time. You also don't need to recapture your data. It prevents data capture errors, and you don't need a code book, because if you download it, you can, it defines all your code, your categorical data for you. So as a biostatistician, that's actually much better for me. It makes it easier for us to work with the data. So in laboratory trials, you could have on one particular day 9 trials of one material on day 0, but if you've got 3 materials, you can end up having 27 data entries that you have to put in. So those are the 9 trials of the first material on day 0. So you're going to have to do this 27 times. That's long format data, right? But if you wanted to do it, separate them for day 0, day 7, day 14, day 21, day 28, you can clearly see that there's some missing data in the wide format. So when you're working in REDCap, this is what your instrument would look like. You can indicate what specimen number it was, 1 to 9, what day it was, what material you were using, what your outcome was. In this case, it was CFUs. What's also nice about this, let me just go back, is that not only can you create CFUs, but you can also create log of CFUs within REDCap. REDCap for systematic reviews. So say you're doing your systematic review and you're uploading everything into Excel or Google's. I like Google spreadsheets because then everybody has access to it. You have your author, your publication, your mean, and your standard deviation. Like something like province. Sometimes you put in a spelling error, then it comes. You'll have 2 Limpopos if you import it into any one of your statistical software. This would be a data capture sheet within REDCap, and then you can place different options for province so that you don't have any spelling errors. Because if you have a space between Western province and 2 spaces between Western and province, it comes up as 2 separate categories. And in REDCap, you can also put in data validation, meaning that you can't have negative numbers, that you can't have the decimal in the wrong place. This is what the data would look like within REDCap. It looks very similar to the one in Excel. At the end of the day, it's just personal preference. So if you're working in the field, this is, so this would be dental treatment being performed in Klipierville. There is no internet access because you're either in a school or a church or in a wall where there's no internet access. But if you're interested in finding out exactly what's happening within the mouths of these children, we can collect quantitative data from them. So 18 refers to the tooth number, 17 refers to the tooth number. It's the top right molars. Right at the back is the 8, that's your wisdom tooth, and the one in front of that is the 7. Here we've got an option of the different categories that is called. This is a radio bullet, and you can have a default and say, I want to default this as healthy. Now, in the Western Cape, we have such a poor oral health.
Fahima, I seem to have lost you here. Can anybody confirm?
The default could be healthy. Okay. You can also do calculated fields. So say we calculate how many teeth were classified as decayed. You can then sum up that score and you can show it off in a calculated field to say that 4 teeth were for this participant was decayed, nothing was missing, 1 was filled, and you can get an overall score. All of this can be calculated within REDCap. You can also collect qualitative data where you give options and you have an other option and you have a box that says please elaborate, which either one of you can, the participant or the researcher, can fill out. So we've spoken about mobile applications before. So you click on you get an API token, you download REDCap onto your phone. That's what it will look like. You can scan your QR code, or you can type in a code that's generated. Going to my projects, and exactly what we had before, features onto your tablet, onto your cell phone, which is fantastic. Notice that the bullet is also circled, the default bullet is also highlighted. Yeah. Then somebody asked a question, can a participant add a file? You have this option of saying you can call this variable photo, and you can say upload file. So if you go into your field type, you say file upload for users to upload files, and it gives you this option over there where you can upload any file that you would like to upload. You can also have descriptive text, and you can have visual, like diagnostic photos, when you say this is what early childhood caries looks like. And then you can have that as part of your survey. So if you're asking a question and say, this is what it should look like, and your photo will be on the side. Thank you very much. I hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thanks, Fahima. That was very interesting. And I guess well, we'll take questions at the end. I think that in the interest of time, I think that would be best. So I'll take some notes, I mean, for people here. So we should be moving on, I mean, to our last speaker, I mean, before the final round of questions and thoughts. So our next speaker will be Tamriel Frank from the School of Public Health at UWC. Tamriel works in the food environment policy space in obesity and non-communicable diseases prevention. She's a researcher and a PhD, I'm working toward a PhD at this stage, which is in the area of obesity prevention policies in low-income settings. She's serving on the research working group advising the South African Department of Health on the labeling of food items. And prior to joining the School of Public Health, Tamriel worked as a primary healthcare dietitian for 8 years for the Department of Health. Tamriel, please go ahead and share your screen. Oh, okay, brilliant. It's come up nicely, so you can take it away. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So as Mattia has said, I am presenting on behalf of the Food Environment Research Group that's headed up by Prof. Rena Swart. Alice Khan is also on the call, and she's got quite a bit of REDCap experience. So she will also be assisting with answering some of the questions. And just as a disclaimer, to date, all the projects that I've worked on have been housed at the University of North Carolina. So I haven't worked on the UWC site yet, but I think it's quite similar. And I've also mostly worked in a supervisory role. So that's the experience that I'm sharing from. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, the types of projects that we work on in REDCap, we find it quite helpful to set up training projects to assist with practicing for data entry before we start with real projects. And training projects are also great to ensure that questionnaires are set up correctly and that the branches in the questionnaire are working in the intended fashion. We have a project that we've been running for 4 years on collecting nutrition information panel data, which we enter information from photographs of packaged foods. And also a project on packaged child-directed marketing or advertising on packaged food products. Then we will be starting, this will be our first UWC REDCap project on a social media influencer project. And all of these projects are based on working on a computer, but we do other team members in our team are considering doing a national nutrition survey and using REDCap, the mobile app, in the field to collect data during data collection in the field. So just to give you, just that you understand the type of data, we collect photographs in stores. And Razia, just to comment on your question, we didn't find this type of data collection, the number of photos effective to collect in REDCap. So we do it outside of REDCap and we save them in SharePoint and then enter the data into REDCap. Our projects have about 15,000 individual products on them. And then within REDCap, we're also able to do quality control of the data that has been entered. And thereafter, we will export it out and do final cleaning and then analysis of the data. So this might be the raw data on food products that we will enter. So our data entrers will have a look at the nutrition information panel and into REDCap capture the grams of protein or sugar or energy. They will type all the ingredients from the ingredient list and enter the barcode as a unique identifier and so on. Then within REDCap, it's quite useful that one can have a number of different projects on the go at the same time, and you can have different people within each project. So this is quite helpful to ensure that people are given the right level of access to each project that they're working on. For instance, in one project, one may only be needing to view the data, but in another project, you may be needing to edit the data. So this can be, depending on what work is being done, this can be done. And this just helps to ensure that one is POPI compliant in terms of level of access. And then you will also see on the right-hand side of the screen, the status of the project. So there's different levels. A project can be in production, which is that toolbar, or active, which is the green tick, or inactive, which is the red no entry. And whilst a project is in production, you can still edit your questionnaire and you can make changes to it. But once it's active, you can no longer edit it. And of course, this is quite useful because during actual data collection, you don't want your questionnaire changing. And then after data collection, you can make your project inactive. If you've finished and you don't want any changes, accidental deletions or additions that you don't want there, you can make the project inactive, and you can always reactivate it again should you need to make any further changes in the project. Then each user who is part of the project can have different levels of access. So in the REDCap menu, you can see the view user access with the red circle around it. If you were to click on that, it will show you what different level of access different users have. And here you can choose to, for instance, allow certain people to export data outside of REDCap and other people not to have that function. Again, very helpful in terms of the POPI Act. And yeah, so depending on what the person's role is in the project, you can give them different levels of access. And then over here on the record status dashboard, one can see how much progress you've made with your data entry. And here it will show you all the different items or questionnaires that have been completed. Each questionnaire can be divided up into different forms or sections. So you can complete a different section at a different time. So you will see for each product, here we've got a product name, which is one form, basic information, which is another form, nutrition facts panel would be another form, and so on. The green circles indicate that the form has been completed, that the data has been entered. Should it be red, it would show that it has some of the data has been entered, but it hasn't yet been finished. So that is quite useful if, for instance, a data enterer might get up to take a tea break or a lunch break. They can just mark the form as incomplete to know that they need to go back to it later. The different forms also allow different data enterers to work on the same questionnaire. And so depending on the type of questionnaire, this can be useful. For us, it's an extremely important function because we have one specific person who's trained to do the first form of naming the product. So we ensure that our naming process is standardized, but we have other data enterers who enter the other forms on the questionnaire. So this is quite useful. One thing that can sometimes cause a bit of a headache is that you can't delete a form an entry once you've created it. However, overall, this is actually a data protection mechanism, so it is beneficial in the long run, but sometimes it can be a bit of a pain. And then within the project, in terms of managing the project and the staff who are using the REDCap to enter data, a form that's quite useful to use is the logging form. And over here, you're able to see all the activity that's gone on within REDCap, and you can filter it by the username and by the date and by the time. So if, for instance, you had a team out in the field doing data entry and you were concerned that maybe they were not on a Friday afternoon actually actively collecting their data, you would be able to go and look and see who'd been online on the Friday afternoon and entering data, for instance. So it can be useful. It's also really nice to be able to provide feedback to the team of targets and what progress is being made. Then a function that we find extremely helpful, because it is such a big project, is using the data quality function. And over here, one is able to run a number of reports to identify any quality control issues with the data. So REDCap provides you with a number of standard options. For instance, you can run a test to see if there are any answers that have a blank or missing value. For us, that is not helpful at all, because we expect there to be certain missing values. But you're also able to create your own data quality reports, and you can just use the variables and Boolean operators to create a report. So for instance, we've got one that identifies food products that have excessively high energy values or have an energy value of 0, which we wouldn't expect. And so one can then run a report and see which products these are. So we have someone for me doing this as a quality control measure in the project. And then once they've run the report, they're able to identify who the data entry user was, and they can then send them a message using this resolve issues function. And over here, you can see, for instance, Alice has typed a message saying, ingredients are missing, please enter them. The user will then get that message and be able to go and enter on REDCap, have a look at the product, and then make the necessary edits to the forms that have mistakes on them. And they can then respond and say that they've corrected it, or they can provide a message. After that, the data quality control officer can then close the query, or they can send another message back if further action needs to be taken. So this is really great for data integrity and quality control of the project. And then you can also run various different reports as well. If you want to do spot checks on different aspects of the data, again, you can create your own reports. I think we have 105 different reports in this project. So there's, yeah, you can do as many as you want, depending on the variables you want to have a look at and check. Fahima mentioned the codebook, and here's just an example of, if you use the codebook, what the REDCap codebook will look like when they extract the data for you. So very handy, not having to write this all out yourself after you've created your questionnaire. And then another helpful tip to use is making use of the file repository. And this is quite useful if you do have a collaborative project where you've got a lot of different people working on it, and you want to ensure that the project protocols are easily accessible, any training manuals or instructions for data entries, and then you can ensure that all your updated forms are in one place and easy. And yeah, that's my email address. You're welcome to send me any questions if you do have them. Thanks.
Thanks, Tamriel. That was very interesting, and I can see you're a fan of broccoli, like I am. So that's that makes two of us. I guess we're now moving on in panel mode, as it were. So the speakers that we had on the call, as well as myself and Clayton Matthews from ICS, will be at hand now. To answer any questions you might have. I understand we're running over time, but hopefully you'll be interested in staying on and asking us a few questions. We'll be providing the link to the recording on our website, as well as over email to all registered attendees. So please, if you have missed something, or if you'd like to point people to this recording and to some of the material that was incorporated in the webinar today, please do so, and wait, I mean, for our communication in that regard. So I will start answering some questions in no particular order. I mean, we addressed a few, I mean, during the presentations, I think. So there's a question by Rajia Adam about whether the eResearch office will be able to guide from project design phase. I guess that we are certainly the first port of call in this respect. So by all means, I mean, do drop us an email. Hopefully, I mean, some of the speakers today, I mean, will also chip in and suggest, I mean, the best way forward for your specific needs. So please do get in touch, and we'll be doing our best, I mean, to advise in this respect. Now, Sarah and Freddy, perhaps you can also help me out, I mean, digging out some of the most useful questions that we didn't get around to answer. There was, I think most of the questions, I mean, revolved around REDCap capabilities and how it, how it can compare, I mean, with other tools. I think my view on that is that, Google Forms, I mean, can probably help. I mean, if you're just seeking, I mean, a yes/no question from a bunch of people, I mean, for a short amount of time. I think the advantage of REDCap is, being able to store, I mean, all of your different projects in one place. I mean, being able, I mean, to compare projects with each other in a streamlined fashion, and also, I mean, the security that comes, I mean, from hosting it, I mean, on a platform that was conceived for research purposes. And then, of course, I mean, you can assemble, I mean, different sorts of data, perhaps image, using REDCap as an image repository is not as straightforward as people may want, I mean, particularly for large numbers of images, but it is a possibility. So, I mean, one can certainly share, I mean, individual pictures and the like, I mean, over a REDCap database. So, okay, I see another comment here about a data import tool on the interface. So this is a reply, I mean, to the previous question. So there is a data import tool within REDCap. Of course, I mean, it might work best, I mean, with specific data formats. So one would have to try it out, I mean, and see what works best, I mean, for your specific need. And there are, of course, I mean, lots of training resources. So our website, eResearch.uwc.ac.za, includes, I mean, some pointers, I mean, to the to training material, I mean, that was assembled by the community. So it's a first port of call for frequently asked questions, as well as for training material. So if you get stuck and you can't find out, I mean, what you need, I mean, please drop us an email, and we'll do our best to advise and improve our list of frequently asked questions on the website. Going back in terms of questions. Okay, there were some questions about, about the data analysis side of things, I mean, that Freddy mentioned, and we'll be providing more information also to attendees. I mean, the demonstration done by Freddy was not meant, I mean, to be the only way, I mean, to go about analyzing things in REDCap. I mean, the flexibility of REDCap is that it allows you, I mean, to do things in basically all sorts of spreadsheet or statistics software. So you'll be spoiled for choice, I mean, in terms of exporting and reading in, I mean, the data that was gathered by REDCap with other tools. And the Friday's demonstration was also meant to showcase, I mean, the focus on visualization, I mean, that can be done, I mean, through different tools. So can anybody add, I mean, something, I mean, to the points that I made, I mean, about the different questions? I'm sure I've missed some, and of course, I mean, we're happy to hear more from you here.
Thanks, Mattia. Can I quickly answer Alice's question? She's just asked support for REDCap from UWC. Alice, as I mentioned, REDCap is still pretty new to UWC, and eResearch kind of manages the instance with help from ICS, of course. And as a team, the eResearch office isn't, you know, we're not REDCap experts. We're learning. I'm learning how to use it. We're learning, but it also comes from our community, as you've seen today. You know, we contact people in the UWC community who use REDCap, who are experts at it, and it's all about communication and accessing the resources that REDCap offers from the international community. So it's we offer support as far as we can, and we generally point people towards the right training where it exists, if that helps.
Yeah, I think in this in this wide world of, I mean, of different tools, I mean, lots of programming languages have been mentioned, I mean, in the chat. I mean, we do not necessarily provide formal training in each and every of this tool. I mean, well, we do provide, I mean, pointers, I mean, to existing resources. We provide the occasional webinar or workshop, such as today's, and we do try to create, I mean, a community so that people can learn from each other, as it were, I mean, in the learning journey. And of course, I mean, REDCap is not a one-size-fits-all solution. So it might, I think, as a researcher, as a student, I mean, who's developing, I mean, some new research project, I mean, it's important to realize what can be useful for your project. So in this context, I mean, if you do approach us, I would suggest that you spend a little time, I mean, detailing what you have in mind. So also something very basic, as in we'd like to gather well, personal details, but also images, or maybe just, I mean, some numerical data or some textual data, including, I mean, sentiment, feeling, emotions about specific issues. And so if you do that, I mean, we'll be much better able to support you with, well, by pointing you to REDCap, or perhaps, I mean, some alternative tool that could come in handy. I think REDCap, as it was abundantly shown, I mean, by Fahima and Tamriel, I mean, allows you to work with students as well as with extended research groups locally and internationally. It is a tool, I mean, that is offered, I mean, by academic institutions across the world. So chances are that you will bump into it, I mean, if you stay in academia, and you can use it, I mean, through some online services also for your own research. So it is here to stay, and I think it was very useful to give a glimpse of what people can achieve using it in research. Right. So if there are no further questions or thoughts, I mean, about Fahima and Tamriel, perhaps Fahima and Tamriel might want to comment on their REDCap learning journey. So how they got started and what they felt was most useful in terms of reading before getting started with the actual service, or perhaps, I mean, learning by doing was the best avenue toward making use of REDCap. What are your thoughts, Fahima and Tamriel, about this?
I think I was quite lucky in that I got exposed to it slowly, and I had people with a lot of expertise guiding me along the way. Alice, I'm going to jump on you. Alice has completed her master's project using REDCap, and she developed her questionnaire herself and set it up herself. And Alice, I think maybe you might just want to reflect on that process, because I don't think we spoke too much about the actual questionnaire.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I've created a very basic longitudinal survey for child-directed marketing on breakfast cereals. I've personally found the platform very easy to use, and I think someone asked a question about coding, and I just wanted to say that it's quite menu driven. So they've got something called an online designer, and it's really, if you have upfront a good understanding of what it is you want to ask and how it is that you want
Okay, thank you very much.
Oops.
Then,
Sorry, there was some disturbance, but I think it's gone now. Go ahead.
okay, no problem. It's quite easy to just follow the logic you have in place of the questionnaire you want to develop and use the prompts from the online designer. So it's in plain English, and it's a simple process to follow, and the coding for it will happen automatically behind the scenes. And that's what you will see as the code book in the end that Tamriel showed in her presentation. So I found it quite useful and easy to use, and the fact that you can export that code book and export your data into Excel if you need to clean up and take it to any statistical package for analysis thereafter. And hence my question about that Jupyter, because I hadn't seen that before and how it would have been different from SPSS, for example. But yeah, I like the idea of one place for everything in your project. So if you collaborate with more than one person in the team, everybody has access to the project in one place. You have good controls in the data integrity of what's in your project, and very easy to set up your forms. Well, for basic forms, I have not tried anything more complicated than what I've put in place currently, but I would encourage everyone to use it. It is quite a useful tool. Thank you.
Thanks. There was a further question from Mariam, although we didn't hear from Fahima and her beginner's journey with REDCap, probably long ago now.
Thanks. I was not lucky enough to get exposed to REDCap professionally before. So most of the stuff that I learned was through trial and error. What was nice is that it's so user-friendly. I have had an undergraduate project, and my fourth-year student, one of them, created the survey by herself without any questions. She's like, this is what I did. She had a problem with branching logic, which I helped sort out, and putting in a consent form, which I helped sort out for her. But other than that, she did everything by herself. So there's no need for massive intervention from anyone else, unless it's really complicated, like Tamriel's national study with longitudinal inputs over 50 different questionnaires, then I suppose you might need to contact Tamriel. But if it's cross-sectional or it's very short, the training videos, Rizia's asking, the training videos can just be found on Project REDCap. And if you just Google search, it's very easy. You won't have any issues. And yeah, if you have any problems, you can always contact either the research office for further assistance.
Right. And there was also a question about how can one, not really sure I got it right. Can a project being worked on a different university license share a project to use on UWC license platform? I think perhaps one of the ways in which we can phrase this question is whether, people can, well, on one end, people can invite, external users, to work on a project. I think a project, a full project, a full database can be exported and re-imported into another instance, although I suppose, that's going to be useful, mostly for long-term projects, so that might have very, very specific needs, very specific constraints. So I'm sure that's possible, and I'm also sure that you can use the same project template, to regenerate, a project and import data rather effectively. Although we haven't had a similar need so far. So people have either kept working on projects that were hosted elsewhere, or have created, brand new projects on our platform. So we haven't had a project being onboarded, being transferred from platform to platform. But the the infrastructure inherently, I mean, supports that rather easily. So I think that should be eminently possible. And again, if you do find yourself in a position to want to move a project, I mean, from another REDCap install to our own UWC install, please get in touch. Right. I see a bunch of questions again about training material, both about Jupyter and Python and about REDCap. Our website is an excellent place to start. So there should be some easy navigation, I mean, to the resources, I mean, about REDCap and about well, cloud computing tools and data-intensive research. If you can't find what you're looking for, by all means, I mean, drop us an email and we'll do our best, I mean, to point you to the right place and perhaps improve the navigation of our website in the process. So if nobody, I mean, can pick up a question I've missed off the chat, I'd like to bring this to a close. I'm happy to report that we're still seeing, I mean, the vast majority of the attendees, I mean, with us. I think we hit the 55 at some point, but there's still 52 with us. So not many had to leave on the hour. We'll, as I mentioned, we share the recording and we'll provide you, I mean, further tips, I mean, via email, I mean, for the interested, for those interested in developing, I mean, their interest in REDCap and Jupyter. If there's nothing else, I'd just like to thank our speakers again, Sarah, Freddie, Fahima, and Tamriel. We are lucky. We were lucky to have you today, and I've now seen, I mean, some actual use of REDCap in the flesh, I mean, through your presentation. So I think we are on track, I mean, to providing better support, I mean, for a wider set of research projects at UWC going forward. So thanks everybody, and thanks for attending, and keep in touch about further training events, I mean, in this realm of research data management.
Thanks very much.